evening, everybody, and welcome to my new streaming home for now. I am back in the UK. It's been a while, so I thought I'd jump on and we're going to do a little bit of a longer stream. The last couple of streams I've done have only been 10 or 15 minutes because I've been busy traveling and doing all sorts of stuff. So I thought today we'd get into the nitty-gritty of Scientology's planning application that they have submitted with regards to their upcoming IAS event. IAS being the International Association of Scientologists, Scientology's official membership body. They have an annual event every year at their UK headquarters. It's the largest fundraising event in the Scientology calendar over here in Europe. Thousands of people travel from all over the world to attend this event, and they've got in a little bit of trouble for erecting this huge 45,000 square foot marquee without planning permission. They have submitted a planning application, but it's not quite what it seems. I mentioned this in my last live stream, and I thought I would spend the time going over their application in this live stream because I haven't been able to do that while I've been traveling, and also talk about the outcome of a little discussion I had with Mid Sussex District Council with regards to the safety of members of the public who want to write in with regards to the planning application. So stay tuned. We're going to get through all of that. But first, let's say hello to everybody that's coming in the chat. There's a lot of you. Gosh, SP Crusader, my wonderful moderator, Leanie, saying, hi, everyone. Great to see you all. Please remember to hit the like button. Yes, absolutely. That is the best way to support the channel. And it costs you absolutely nothing to like and subscribe. And then you'll get notifications whenever I go live. Hey, Hon Puds. Hi, Alex and chat. John is in the house. Hello, Alex. Hello, John. Austin is here. Hello, all. Hello, Austin. Good to see you. Jojo Bananas saying, hey, Alex and chat. Barbara Bornholt here saying, hi, everyone. We have Petrie Na in the house. Thank you so much for joining. Jojo Bananas saying good evening. Wheeled Medic says, I'm sure a fire chief would love to do a safety inspection also, Alex. Yes, well, that's one thing that they are avoiding by not submitting the required planning application for their massive erection. Let's not forget, this is an unwanted erection that does not have permission. We also have Katura here saying, hello, friends of Xenu. Hi, Alex. Hello. Golden Astrocat saying hello, everybody. Howard Taylor Esquire in the house. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you enjoyed your trip to America. Keep the pressure up. Thank you. Yes, I have just come back from a trip to the States, which I'm sure we will talk about a little bit later on. But I don't want to bury the lead. The title is The Council Responding to Fair Game Concerns. And essentially, what has happened is, and we'll get into the planning application a little bit later, but for East Grinstead residents, if you live in or around East Grinstead and you are concerned about this latest development and you want to leave a comment on the planning application, historically, typically your name and address are published as part of the public consultation period. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, if there's a planning application submitted, the members of the public, local residents, have an opportunity to comment on the application, either in support or against it, and your name and address are published as part of that. Now, a number of local residents have contacted me saying, I'm concerned about my safety because if I leave a comment saying I don't approve of this redevelopment at St. Hill, but I leave a comment, Scientology will know that I don't approve of their development, and therefore they will come after me and harass me. Scientology's fair game is a well-known, well-documented thing that happens, and so they have been afraid to share their thoughts publicly on the public register. So I contacted Mid Sussex District Council and explained that a number of people have contacted me wishing to leave a comment on the application that live locally to East Grinstead but are scared of the repercussions. Scientology have a well-documented history of attacking and intimidating and harassing its critics and anybody who gets in the way of what they want to do. And would you consider redacting people's private information from the public record in this instance? And the council came back to me and said, yes, they would do that. So let me read the article here. This is on my blog, scientologybusiness.com. The link is in the description down below. Where's my face gone? There we go. The link is in the description down below. How do I get rid of my name at the bottom? That's rather annoying. There we go. Okay, so this is my blog, and as it says, Sussex residents unhappy about plans for a major redevelopment at Scientology's UK headquarters will have their names and addresses redacted from the public record after concerns were raised about potential harassment by the organisation. I'm not going to read the whole article, but what I will do is read the comment that the council sent. This is from a council official. We normally redact names and email addresses from representations that appear on the public website, but leave home address visible. In this instance, we will also redact home addresses. We would advise those making representations to avoid including within the body of their correspondence any identifying information, as this will not be redacted. In any case, personal information of that nature is unlikely to be treated as material planning consideration for the application, such as their experience with the church and their interactions. The officer report will note the number of responses received from local residents who are directly affected by the proposals, as that would be material to consideration of the application. So, what does that mean? Essentially, it means that if you are a local Sussex resident, if you're local to St Hill, and you want to leave a comment about their developments, you can now do so using the normal channels, the Mid Sussex website, planning portal, or by email. And you can rest assured that your name and email and address will not be shared publicly, will not be given to Scientology, and your comments will indeed be anonymous. Now, if you're watching this from overseas, or you're watching this from a place other than Sussex, I believe you can leave a comment if you want to on the planning application, but it's not advised because it won't really be taken into consideration. And even if there's a lot of public outrage about a development, what really matters is the comments of local residents, people who are going to be directly affected by the development. And so therefore, I would advise there's no point really commenting unless you live in Sussex or near St Hill in East Grinstead. And you can be assured that you will not be harassed by Scientology for leaving a comment that says, I don't support this proposal. Normally, your information will be published, but in this instance, I've managed to negotiate with the council that your privacy will be protected. So if you're watching this and you're an East Grinstead resident or a Sussex resident, and you are concerned about the major redevelopment of St Hill and the impact that their annual IES event has on the local community in the form of traffic congestion, the thousands of cars that attend, and the fact that this site is just not suitable for an event of this scale, you can now leave a comment, and you can do so in confidence, which I think is a major win, and should hopefully open the door for lots of people in order to leave their comments without fear. And the application number is DM, so David Miscavige, funnily enough, /25, as in the year, /2223. That's the reference number for the application that you can find on the planning portal. So I hope that reassures people who are concerned. We're going to talk a little bit more about this application, and we're going to go through some of the documents that have been supplied by the Church of Scientology. So a little bit of context for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about. The IES event is an annual occurrence. It is a huge fundraising event that happens at St Hill, Scientology's UK headquarters. Thousands of Scientologists come from across Europe to attend this event to hear reclusive leader David Miscavige speak. They also part with vast sums of their wealth in the form of donations. It's a 3-day event. The Friday is usually the big IES event, which is where Miscavige talks about how wonderful and great Scientology is and what they've been doing in the last year. The Saturday is usually the Patrons Ball, which is something that ticket sales alone generate $1.2 million for the church. This is where the biggest donors of the year get big trophies. If you donate over $1 million, you even get a photograph with David Miscavige. And then on the Sunday, they hold a charity concert, which is where they donate £50,000 checks to local charities in a bid to win them over and get their support for things like this planning application. It usually happens on a weekend in October. The anniversary of the IES itself, I think, off the top of my head, was the 7th of October. So they usually try and hold it on or around those dates. And the last 2 years, there's been a protest outside. For those of you who've been following my channel for some time will realise the first protest in 2023 that I organised was the largest protest in the UK against Scientology abuse for about 15 years. It made headlines across the UK. The Guardian and a couple of other newspapers, the Daily Mail, covered it. And last year it was a much smaller protest, but we were under the careful eye and the scrutiny of the council because Scientology had submitted an application for a PSPO, Public Spaces Protection Order. They had tried to ban protesting outside the IES event. That process was about a year from the start to finish. It was a very big legal battle that ended up being rejected. We won that as protesters, and I couldn't have done that without the support of you guys and the protesters that stand there alongside me and help with the planning and that sort of thing. That was a big battle that we did win. There were observations of our behaviour, and the council found that we had done nothing wrong. We weren't harassing anybody. We didn't do anything illegal. There were no arrests. And in fact, all of the problems that Scientology were complaining about were a result of the event itself. Now, what makes it particularly amusing is during this PSPO process, the council went and had a look at the protest and the event last year. Scientology were complaining that there were huge traffic issues and congestion on the road and people standing in the road and, all of these issues that were caused by the protesters. And the council watched the protest last year and noted that we stood on the verge, on the side of the road in a designated area. We did not interfere with the traffic. And in fact, the obstructions to the public right of way were put there by the Church of Scientology. And the fact that the traffic was so bad was because Scientology had poor traffic management skills. And simply put, they were unwilling to use the multiple entrances that there are to the St. Hill property. St. Hill has several entrances, one of which is reserved for L. Ron Hubbard's own use, who died in 1986, and it's reserved for his return when he comes back in his second life. So nobody's allowed to use that entrance. Instead, they just used the one entrance at the top of their property, and thousands of cars showed up. Scientology were not able to manage it. They were all showing up at the same time. It's a dark country, narrow lane. And all of these traffic issues were caused by Scientology's poor event management, not because of the protest. So Mid Sussex History Council said to Scientology, would you consider creating a new entrance to the property so that you have a better traffic flow, so that people can come in one entrance, get dropped off on the property, and then they can leave through the other entrance? And Scientology said, no, we're not going to do that, because the reason that there's poor traffic is because of the protesters. And why should we, as the Church of Scientology, bear the cost of such a development when it should be the protesters that pay for a new entrance? So this has only further added to the hilarity of it, because Scientology claimed that all of those problems were due to us. And now they're submitting a planning application for a new entrance to be built and admitting that the traffic issues and the congestions were caused by their event, and therefore this planning application solves those problems. So Scientology have done a huge U-turn on this, which I do think is funny. Before we go any further, let's look at some of these comments. Wheeled Medic says you can report it to the local fire safety team. They will have a duty to try to inspect. Yes, absolutely. I'm sure that is something that is being looked at. Jojo Bananas says, I hope we get an actual date soon. Yeah, and this is another problem, is Scientology advised last year that they have to, as per their premises license, give the council 6 weeks notice of any large events that they're hosting at their property. They have so far not given 6 weeks notice. Last year, they only gave 4. If we look at the history of the IES dates, in 2023, a date was announced on the 3rd of October, and the date for the event was the 3rd of November. In 2024, the date was announced on the 5th of October, and the event itself took place on the 24th. So we don't yet know the date of this year's event, but I'm sure we will get it soon. It is usually at some point in October, and I'll share it with you as soon as I get it. Kestrel said, and the horrid hedge had been removed from the pathway. Perfect for protesting. Exactly. And Scientology is the traffic problem. Precisely. The problems about congestion and impact on the local community are all a result of Scientology's event, not the protests. That is the view of the council. That was found after the PSPO last year. Moose or Mouse, sorry, says what percent of the residents of East Grinstead are cult members? I did the math on this once, and it's something like 0.01% of the population of East Grinstead and Mid Sussex are Scientologists. It's not a large proportion at all, but you've got to remember that thousands of people attend this event from across Europe. Karen says, wow, thank you for the gift of membership, and you are welcome. If you guys want to support the channel, you can press the like button. You can comment down below once the live stream finishes. You can also donate to the channel using Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal and all that sort of stuff. The links are in the description. Young Matador says, I drove past the marquee a few years ago. The actual size was far bigger than I was expecting, nearly dwarfs St. Hill Manor / house. Yeah, precisely. This marquee is not just a small tent. It is a 45,000 square foot events venue that is built without permission every year, or so far every year for the last 3 years, at the St. Hill property. Now, getting into this planning application, it's important to note Scientology have not yet requested permission for the tent itself. Scientology have built this massive 45,000 square foot marquee, which is currently in situ in the Garden of St. Hill, and they have erected it without permission. And I understand that Mid Sussex District Council are treating this as a breach of planning rules, and they are looking at their options at enforcement. Last year, Mid Sussex District Council issued Scientology a planning contravention notice and said, hey, look, you can't just build this massive structure on private property that is such a large scale and is in place for so long. It's usually in place for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, 3 months of the year, without permission. And next year, you need to apply for permission before you begin construction. Scientology said, yes, no problem. We will work with the council to ensure that we apply for permission next year. And they subsequently have forgotten that that was the agreement they'd made with the council. Construction began mid-August, so it has now been in situ for about 4 or 5 weeks, and the construction has finished. This large marquee is now in place. And my understanding is it's being treated as a breach of planning rules. However, Scientology have submitted a planning application, but it's not actually for the marquee. The planning application itself is for, and let me read it to you, just to get the wording right, so you can see exactly what they have requested permission for. The planning application says they ask for a hard paved car park with 121 spaces and toilet facilities adjacent to St. Hill Road. Halved paved access road servicing both During and Hobbs Fields. These are the names of the 2 fields in East Grinstead near the venue. Engineered grass surface provision of 619 spaces for temporary parking for specific events in the During Field. Recontouring of Hobbs Field with grassed surface and provision of permanent pads for the marquee, together with washroom facilities and substation with backup generator. So essentially, Scientology have submitted a planning application asking for permission to build a giant car park and put in the infrastructure required that they can use to build a marquee in the future. They haven't actually applied for permission to build the tent itself. And that is why it's being treated separately as an enforcement issue, because they haven't applied for permission. What they did do is submit a application for a lawful development certificate. They argued that because they've been using this marquee for 10 years or more, it should be grandfathered in, and therefore they're exempt from planning laws. And the council swiftly rejected that application and said that the marquee is temporary in nature because they put it up, they use it, and they take it down, and it's not even being used every year for 10 years. And so therefore, the LDC was denied, and they were once again advised that they are required to apply for planning permission. So let's look at this application itself. Mouse says rules don't apply to them, apparently. Exactly, and that's the problem here, is they think they are above the law. Okay, so I'm going to share some of these documents with you here. These are all publicly available on the Mid Sussex District Council website under the application number DM25223. If you want to look at the Mid Sussex Planning Portal, you can get these, but I'm also sharing them here. And we're going to look at some of the more interesting parts. So, this is what's called the Design and Access Statement. It's very lengthy, so we're not going to read all of it, but it does give you a good idea of what we're looking at here. So this is a photograph of the St Hill property. Here is the current access road. This is the car park that they currently have in place. This here is what's called the the During field, which is currently a field. This is a mock-up of what they want it to look like. So this is currently a field that they use for car parking for the event. And this field here to the back of the castle is the Hobbs field, which is where they host the event. So this is St Hill Castle. This is St Hill Manor, which this application admits is not a manor house at all and is in fact St Hill House. The castle is a faux castle that was built in the 1960s by Sea Org slave labour. There are many children who were used in the construction of that building. This is the OT course room area. That's where you learn about Xenu, the overgalactic space warlord who dropped H-bombs on volcanoes 75 million years ago. That's the sacred scripture of Scientology that you learn about on OT3. So this is the current car park. This is St Hill Road along here, which is where we gather and protest. And this is the view from above. Okay, let's have a look at some of the interesting aspects. So there is an ancient woodland here on the property. It is situated in an area of outstanding natural beauty, which means there are greater precautions and rules and scrutiny required for any redevelopment works in the area. It's protected. And in addition to being in an AONB, there is also protected ancient woodland on the property. Now, Scientology have suggested they implement a 15-meter buffer around the ancient woodland, but it's very clear here it's problematic because it's right in between the During field and the Hobbs field. So this During field is what would become the car park, and this Hobbs field is where they build the marquee. Now, I'd like to remind everybody that in Clearwater, Florida, let me stop sharing my screen a second. In Clearwater, Florida, Scientology's Mecca, their massive headquarters building that I went to visit only last week, earlier this week, in fact. They once held the IES event in Clearwater, and they applied for the permits to put this massive tent up in Clearwater. And the city council said, sure, but there's a big tree in the middle of the area that you want to put this marquee, and we will give you permission to build this tent as long as you don't touch the tree because it's a big historic tree. Scientology said, yep, no problem. We won't touch the tree. We'll look after that. And proceeded to chop the tree down. So even though permission was granted with that condition, they ignored the condition and carried on anyway. This, I think, is really important to note when considering Scientology's planning application. It's not just a case of saying you can do this as long as you do this. Scientology will always go and do whatever they want regardless. They just want the green light to start the works, and they will not listen to any conditions or restrictions. And the precedent is there. That's what they've done in the past. So, St Hill Manor has been the UK headquarters of the Church of Scientology since 1959. Over the decades, the site has evolved to accommodate a variety of functions, including religious, administrative, and community uses. Today, it continues to host events throughout the year, serving the church and the local community. The events are supported by the surrounding fields, which have gradually been incorporated into the operational landscape of the site over the last 30 years. Here is some maps and some pictures so you can see how it's currently being used. And this is talking about the structure for the marquee itself. Here are some pictures to show the events that go on and how car parks are used. They did initially submit a plan for the field to the north to be completely paved over into this massive car park. I'd like to note that this would be the largest car park in mid Sussex if this was approved, with 619 spaces. This is what they originally wanted to do. And they submitted what's called a pre-application advice request. And the council came up with some significant concerns, which were then apparently addressed. And they have now modified the proposal to be this special type of surface instead, which we'll get to in a second. But they're not going to pave it over at the moment. Instead, they want to use, where are the pictures? They want to use this here. They want to pave over a small portion of the ground, and the rest of it, they want to use this thing called geocells, which essentially is a field where they put this plastic grid in place so that for all intents and purposes, for most of the year, it looks like a field, but it has a reinforced structure that cars can drive over. So this is the proposal. At the moment, this is the car park that already exists. This is the road that already exists. So this bit to the top here is the new car park they want to build, and this is the new entrance that they want to build in this field. And then this is the geosill structure, which we'll talk more about shortly. Let me just star some of these comments as we're going through, and I'll bring them up later. Some interesting points here, and this is why I love this planning application, is because it exposes the true size of Scientology's event. It talks here about the events. The primary reason that the applicant wishes to develop their site is to improve their hosting capabilities and reduce impact on the fields when running and assisting community events. These community events are held for the benefit of the local community and provide an economic boost to local vendors and suppliers. These events have positive effects on local transport, local accommodation providers, as well as producing additional foot traffic to the nearby town centres and marketplaces. To run these events, St Hill draws together all the resources it has at its disposal to create a great experience for all who attend. To run events at St Hill, St Hill also commits to a large number of volunteer time to their carry out. This is really badly worded. Carrying out the tasks which cannot be outsourced. These volunteers are not paid for their time spent preparing the event. We estimate the time as follows. The IES event, 400 volunteers working 67,200 hours, which means that they only have 400 staff members working on this project, which means St Hill is much smaller than they say it is. And 67,200 hours means all these staff members must be working full time on this project for 4 to 6 weeks. And they must be working more than 12 hours a day. I did the maths. It's in an article on my blog, Scientologybusiness.com. But essentially, they are admitting to the true size of their staff. As for the impact on the local community and environment and economy, this is absolute rubbish. I can attest from personal experience, having worked inside Scientology in the UK, that the impact on the local economy that the IS event has is minimal. Yes, Scientology give £50,000 checks to local charities on the Sunday at the charity concert. However, that's about the extent of the impact on the local economy. Yes, a number of hotel rooms are booked up, but hotel rooms are booked up quite often anyway because of East Grinstead's proximity to Gatwick Airport. Scientologists are bussed on and off the property. And if you are, for example, a Scientologist at Copenhagen or somewhere in Denmark or elsewhere in Europe, you are given a coach ticket. Scientology will hire a coach to pick you up at your org in Europe. They will drive you to St Hill. For example, the drive from Copenhagen is about 20 or 24 hours. So they'll drive you to St Hill. They will drop you off so you can attend the event. And as soon as the event is over, you get back on the coach and they drive you back to your org for another 20 or 24 hours. These people do not stay over in hotels and spend money and shop in local shops on East Grinstead High Street. They are dropped off at the property and then they leave the property and go back home. And for parishioners who do book hotel rooms, they come to the town and then they go straight to St Hill and spend all day there in briefings, attending events, donating money. Then they go back to their hotel room to sleep. Scientology feed them. The Patron's Ball, for example, is a big fancy 5-star Michelin star type dinner. They are fed on the site and they are kept at the St Hill compound all day. Then they go home afterwards. You don't see thousands of people walking around East Grinstead spending money, boosting the local economy when the IES event happens. What you do see, however, is a large amount of traffic, a large amount of congestion, and a large amount of money going to the Church of Scientology. So their argument that there's an economic benefit for the IS event is absolutely ridiculous. I have never seen any benefit of the kind, and I'm yet to hear from a local business in East Grinstead that say, yeah, we see an increase in sales over the weekend of the IES event. Let's look at some of these comments before we carry on. Young Matador says, have you got any favourite pubs in East Grinstead? Yes, there are a couple of really nice pubs in East Grinstead for obvious reasons. I'm not going to name them because then Scientology will know where I will be next time I'm in East Grinstead, and I'd rather not have them know my whereabouts. But yes, there are some lovely pubs in and around EG. Kestrel42 said they probably demoted the SEAL member who agreed to that plan last year. Possibly. Mouse says the degree of entitlement is epic. Exactly. Kestrel42 carrying on with, of course they're entitled. They are clearing the planet after all. Yeah, this is one thing to note, is the reason Scientology think they are above the law is because they think they are the only ones that are genuinely helping clear the planet and do good for the world. They think that their ethics system is far above any justice or legal system in the country. Although they do try and follow laws where possible, they don't always do that. They think they're above the law. Mouse asks, can the UK government entities actually do anything other than institute fines? Yes, we'll get to that shortly. Rachel Harris says, I've been looking into the charity donations they give to local community. I was surprised at how many different charities have received donations. Yes, they do donate, but as it is pointed out down here by Kestrel42, the charity checks are bribes, and we will get into that a bit later on. Mouse is asking a question about birthing. We will get to that later in the stream. But I want to carry on with this planning application here for now. A bit further on, it talks about that pre-application advice that I mentioned. During the pre-application engagement with Mid-Sussex District Council Planning Authority, some parts of the scheme were well received, and we have continued to retain these aspects of the design. Where feedback suggested the need for revision, we have reviewed the design in response to the comments. In particular, the Heritage Officer prepared a lengthy commentary on the proposal and its impact on the local heritage assets. To remedy their concerns, we have developed the scheme in coordination with West Sussex Heritage, who provided expert advice on the development of the design. The outcome of this collaboration is a scheme that has considered the views into the proposal more closely as discussed previously. The pre-application advice also established the essential role of the high-wheeled nation landscape in determining a full planning application on this site. The primary concern would be the visual impact on the surrounding areas. We have sought to mitigate the impact on often proposal on the surrounding landscape by working directly with NPlan, who have provided landscape design, blah, blah, blah. The pre-application advice also highlighted which documents would be validation requirements for this application. From this, we have gathered a wide range of expertise to input into the design and its impact on the surrounding areas. So essentially, Scientology applied for pre-application advice and said, hey, this is what we want to do. What do you think? And the council said, no, we have serious concerns about it. And so they've then tried to adjust the plans in order to make it more favourable to the council. That being one of them, for example, was paving over the car park. So they're now saying they're not going to pave over the whole thing. They'll just pave over a little bit. And for example, the ancient woodland, they're concerned about the impact it will have. This here is a better graphic to show you exactly what they're going to do with the field for the car park. And this is the design for the new entrance. Now, there is a lot of information about this new entrance to the car park. They've talked about how they want to plant this massive hedgerow that's very tall to prevent protesters from seeing anything on the property. There's a new security barrier and so on. And I must say, look, my main concern, especially when organising a protest, is safety. It's a dark country lane. Scientology provide lighting. However, they turn it off for as long as possible until they're told to turn it back on again by the council or the police. We wear high-vis jackets. We do everything we can to try and keep ourselves safe as protesters. We stand on the verge. We don't stand in the road. We have lighting of our own. We make ourselves very visible. And in fact, Scientology were told off during the protest ban situation for not making themselves visible enough. They didn't wear high-vis jackets, for example. The traffic is a main problem around this event because these cars stop in the middle of the road, they overtake each other, taxis are dropping parishioners off in the road. It's very unsafe. There were a number of close calls and potential collisions that almost happened outside St. Hill last year. So any effort to improve safety, to improve traffic flow is one that I support. And I want to make it very clear that if this proposal makes it safer for everybody, I would support it. I have no problem with Scientology making adjustments to their private property that make it safer for everybody. The problem is their proposals at the moment will result in damage to the local environment in a protected area of outstanding natural beauty, and it will further amplify the impact that this event has on the local community. The easiest way of mitigating all of these problems, in my opinion, is to host the event elsewhere. There are a number of suitably sized event venues that are purpose built for hosting thousands of people, for exhibitions, for conferences, and for events like this. So, the best solution, in my opinion, is to host this event somewhere else. There's no reason why Scientology can't host or borrow a venue. That's what they do over in America. If you look at the Ruth Eckert Hall or the Shrine Auditorium, these are the places that Scientology hire in order to use to host their events over there. They don't do that over here, and that's what they should be doing as the easiest solution. But if they refuse to do that, the other option would be yes, perhaps to build this temporary marquee and to put things in place that make it safer for everybody. Now, I'm just having a look at some of these comments in the chat, and please try and stay on topic. We're not here to talk about other people, other creators. We're not here to criticize anybody else or discuss their content. We are just here to talk about Scientology's planning application and the impact the IES event has on the local community. So please, this is your warning to stay on topic. And if you don't stay on topic, you will be timed out by the moderators. So please try and remember that we are here watching a video. I'm talking to you guys about something, so stay on topic. And if you want to discuss other things, take it elsewhere. That's your last warning. Okay, guys, let's carry on with this design and access statement. Planning requirements. And this is another thing that was quite interesting, and it gives the game away for Scientology, because Scientology claim that this event is attended by 10,000 people every year. But actually, it's very clear that this number is a lot smaller. Timeout. There we go. Okay, so Scientology claim that the IS event is attended by, they've claimed 7,000, they've claimed 9,000, they've claimed 10,000 people in the past. The actual capacity of the tent that they use is somewhere in the region of 3,000. So even though they have a premises license that allows them to host events of up to 6,000 people, the size of the tent itself only allows about 3,000 people. And we have estimated in the past that, in fact, the event is only attended by 1,800, 2,000, something like that, rather than 3,000 or the 7,000 or 10,000 that Scientology claim. Now, what gives this away is Scientology's own application, because it talks here about how many car spaces. During the IES event, the highest number of cars was 850, with a total provision of 263 spaces on the permanent car parks and 572 spaces within the field. The total number of available spaces is 835. On the day of the event, the cars can be parked tighter together, and the remaining 15 cars can be accommodated on the field due to the larger size of the bays. So this is an admission by Scientology that at the last IES event, there were only 850 cars that attended. Now, That doesn't mean the attendance is 850. Scientology have coaches and buses that drop people off and take people from the different orgs around Europe. And also there's often more than one person in a car. But it does gives you an indicator of just how small Scientology is in the UK. If this was indeed the largest event for the largest growing religion on planet Earth, to which 10,000 people attended, I can assure you, you would be seeing more than 850 cars on the property. It talks here about these 200 spaces and these 121 new ones that they're going to build and so on. Now, this is the grid system that I mentioned, the geocell. This is the surface that they want to use in the field, in addition to the paved area. So it's this kind of plastic grid system that you can see on the left here. This one is filled in by gravel, but what they want to do is fill the grid in with grass. So it provides a reinforced structure for cars, for example, to drive over, however, looks like a field in normal uses. Rachel says also a car has 4 or 5 seats. Yes, but I can assure you from personal experience, having stood outside the IES event last year and the year before, that the majority of cars were not filled to the brim with 4 or 5 people. Most cars had 1 or 2 passengers, and that's it. There was no way every car in that car park was filled up with lots of people. Kestrel here is also saying, yes, most of the cars in the past only had 2 old people in them, precisely. But given them the benefit of the doubt, even if those 850 cars were filled to the brim with 4 people, that still doesn't give you the grand total of 10,000 that Scientology claim they have on the property. Here is a lot more information about the sort of surfaces and construction that they want to use. It's a very lengthy document that is very boring. They talk about the different types of trees and plants that they're going to use around the site, the sort of foliage. You know, Scientology do like a good shrubbery. But where it starts to get interesting once again is this is the washroom. So they want to build this new toilet facility that will accommodate the thousands of people attending the event. Here's a picture of the tent under construction to give you an idea of the scale. But one of the concerns is the damage that this event does on the local environment. Now, an area of outstanding natural beauty is a protected part of the local ecology that requires greater scrutiny and greater attention when it comes to wanting to develop something on that land. If you're in a protected AONB and you want to build something, the council look down very hard at what you want to do, and because they want to protect the local environment, they want to protect local habitats, local wildlife, and of course things like ancient protected woodland. So the bar is a lot higher to get things approved in an AONB. Now, Scientology have submitted this planning application and said, by giving us permission to do this, you will be protecting the environment. But in the process, they've included pictures highlighting the damage that they have done to the local environment in the past. This is a picture within their design access statement that shows, in fact, I'll read you the comment provided by Scientology. Tent frame erected with field badly damaged by vehicles and weather. You can see here the field that's normally grassland, it's actually registered as farmland, has been badly damaged by the construction works. And here is another picture, which they describe as damaged field during event preparation. So you can see this construction work every year does have a negative impact on the local area. And Scientology are trying to say that by giving them permission to do this work, this damage wouldn't happen. And I don't understand how they can make that case, because construction work damages the environment. It's a fact. And if they are worried about damaging the environment, the most sensible option would be to host the event somewhere else and not to construct this massive events venue. That is the simple solution here. If they're worried about the environment, don't build on it. But that's not what they're suggesting. Also interesting is, where are we? Oh yeah, down here. They have given us the date of the event, not for this year, but for next year. And they have said that in 2026, the IES event will be held on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of October. And then in November, they've got Bonfire Night on the 8th. So this is an advance warning that we've been given that the event next year will be on the second weekend of October, but they've stopped short of giving us a date for this year. So for anyone planning to attend the protest next year, those are the dates to block out in your calendar: 8th, 9th, and 10th. But that's 2026. They have not given a date for the event this year. In fact, if you look at the calendar here, this is for 2026. And if you look at the body of the text, it doesn't actually say when the event will be this year. We are still waiting on that information. So that is the design and access statement. Let me know what you guys think in the comments and the live chat and so on. We're also going to look at some of the representations that have been made by local residents in response to this application. Let's look at some of these comments first. Kestrel says, no boost. If everyone parks at St. Hill, they will just drive straight in and out and spend no money locally. Absolutely. That is what happens. Charity donations are bribes, is what that person, Kestrel, said. Barbara said, I would love to see the new member numbers of Scientology. I feel it would be interesting. Yes, they claim to be the fastest growing religion on planet Earth, but we know that they are much smaller than you think. SP Crusader Leany says, comment, what is wrong with the South of England showground nearby? Precisely, another fantastic venue that's purpose built and would result in zero negative impact on the local environment and the local community. Rachel says, sometimes Alex gets their internal documents that show how many people do the counselling. 100%, I do have lots of internal documents that give us an idea of their size, and it is much smaller than people think or people say they are. Kestrel says they must have a specific date in mind. Yes, they usually go for a date around the 7th or 8th of October, but they haven't actually announced the date of the event itself just yet. So we'll have to keep our ears to the ground on that one. Now, talking of the charity checks that they give out at the charity concert, somebody mentioned that it's a bribe. Now, it's very interesting that last year, the rugby club and the leisure centre, which are located on St Hill Road, received £50,000 checks from the Church of Scientology. And since then, both the rugby club and the sports club have been involved in the attempt to ban protesting and now this planning application. Now, to me, this letter reads as though it was written by Scientology and just signed off by the rugby club. I'm not surprised. If Scientology promised me £50,000 and I was a local charity, fair enough, I get it. But I think it's important to take this into consideration. Now, bear in mind that this is a letter that was given with regard to a planning application. It really doesn't actually talk about the proposed developments at all. This is a letter that was submitted by the East Grinstead Rugby Club, which is just opposite St Hill, that says, it has recently come to my attention that protesters are raising issues with the annual international gathering at the Church of Scientology this October, I believe. In past years, our club has supported the church at the time of this gathering by providing additional parking spaces and access to our grounds. We have always supported the Church of Scientology events and have seen the efforts they make to support the community via these events and their annual charity concert. In past years, we have been approached by a protesting group that has made a nuisance of itself, leading to us banning them from our grounds and seeking security staff to ensure they have no access. Their presence have also caused us to restrict access to our grounds for media companies wishing to sensationalize any protest against the Church of Scientology. Can I close this letter by saying that we have a policy of being a good neighbour, and we have always seen this reciprocated by the team at the Church of Scientology. Now, this is news to me. In fact, my dealings with the rugby club have been nothing but positive. In 2023, I emailed the rugby club and asked if we could use their car park for a small number of protesters that were driving down from the local area. And they said, yeah, no problem. We had a few issues on the day, and the rugby club was actually taken over by Scientology, who had placed their own agents on the gate and stopped us from driving in. I then wrote to the rugby club and said, hey, we're having issues getting in, and you said that we could park there. And they then said, yeah, we'd prefer it if you don't park there because we've had complaints that we're supporting you as a protest group and Scientology are our neighbors and we don't want to upset them too much. So actually, it would be better if you parked elsewhere because we don't want to annoy or anger Scientology. And they give us £50,000 donations. I said, fair enough, and we decided to park somewhere else. Never has a protester tried to sneak on to the land, has been denied access. Protesters have never been banned from the rugby club at all. We've never made a nuisance. And in fact, we are not sort of doing anything that we shouldn't do. They've never placed security staff at the gates of the rugby club. They've just placed a Scientology staff member who checks people's license plates as they go in and out. In fact, the police were based at the rugby club last year, and they didn't see any issues with any protesters whatsoever. This letter is an attack on protesters, but it is attached to a planning application. It makes no reference to the planning, the proposed development at all, and it makes no reference to the car park and so on that Scientology are planning. Therefore, my understanding is Mid Sussex District Council won't really take this into consideration with regard to the planning application, but it does go to show just how under Scientology's control these local groups are. Another letter was received. This was from the cricket club, which, by the way, is 2 miles up the road. I've never had any dealings with the cricket club, and it's not exactly near St Hill, but they wrote saying, I'm writing on behalf of East Grinstead Cricket Club, who are located in St Hill, immediately adjacent to the Church of Scientology. Oh, sorry, no, the cricket club is just next door. It's the football club that I was thinking of that's just up the road. Cricket club is just next door to St Hill. I write in relation to the international gathering held annually by the church, which is attended by up to 6,000 people and is also well supported by the local community. The charity concert, which I have attended on several occasions, is well organised and does not impact us as an immediate neighbour whatsoever. The traffic is well organised to the parking areas and from what we have seen causes little or no effect on other road users. Well, that's not the council's view, that's not the police's view, and that's certainly not what local residents think who have contacted me about it. Control of the attendees is extremely well organised with all the social facilities available within the marquee. The impact of up to 6,000 people being in the town must help the local shops, with many staying on several days or returning later to see more of the area. Again, that's an assumption, but how would they know whether these people are staying on for several days and returning later? This is an assumption, and it's very clearly, in my opinion, written by Scientology. The church being adjacent to us makes us fully aware of any event they are holding, which has never caused us any problems. We also see the good work they do supporting local charities and the community, both at the St Hill facility and in the town. They do some extremely good work, helping whenever they can. And thrown in, almost as if it was an afterthought, it says, I'm also fully in support of the planning application recently submitted for the car parking and new infrastructures that will facilitate the holding of this annual weekend of events. Kind regards. So it is clear that these organizations have been instructed by Scientology to write in with letters supporting their event, defending their right to hold this event, and attacking protesters. These comments are not in support of the planning application or talking about its merits or its considerations. It's just defending the IES event. Scientology are very clearly here treating this application as though their event itself is the thing that is under threat. And I make my case very, very simple. We are not trying to threaten the future of the IES event. Scientology have every right to hold annual conferences, annual events that raise them lots of money, but they don't need to do it and also damage the environment in the local area. There are a number of well-suited, purpose-built venues that would be much more suitable for the hosting of this event annually. They don't need to do it on their property, and all of the problems that they are seeking to resolve are problems created by this event that would simply be avoided by hosting the event elsewhere. I am trying to say here that Scientology have a right to hold their event, but they don't need to do it on their property, which is in an area of outstanding natural beauty. That's my case. But anyway, there is a lot more to go through. I won't keep you guys for too much longer. The last little bit of information is Scientology have applied for a hoarding license. The specifics are not actually known. This is all the information we have. This is the West Sussex Highways website, causeway1.network, and it shows that from the 3rd till the 31st of October, on St Hill Road. It's the Church of Scientology, it says here are the applicants. There's going to be no carriageway incursion, but they have asked for hoarding. It says delays are unlikely. It doesn't actually give us any more information than that. But my understanding is they've applied to put a fence up basically along St Hill Road for the month of October. Now, we've seen this happen before. Scientology often place planters along the road, to try and obstruct the view of protesters and the spaces available for them to stand. It's unclear from this website what sort of hoarding it's going to be, where exactly it's going to be, and I'm waiting to hear back from the council to hear more information about the hoarding. But it is clear they are doing their best to try and disrupt our protest plans, and they're trying to keep the date itself of the event a secret because they've applied for a license for the whole month and not just the weekend. SP Crusader Leany says, whatever next? Exactly. They are stopping at nothing in their attempts to interfere with our plans and continue with their IS event, even though they don't have permission for it. Now, Mouse, with the question that you raised earlier, this is such a great time to bring this up. Can the UK government entities actually do anything other than institute fines? Well, yes, and this is where we find ourselves. Scientology have submitted a planning application for this major redevelopment of their St. Hill compound, but they haven't applied for permission to build this giant tent. They have built the tent anyway, and last year enforcement action was taken in the form of a planning contravention notice. So, what happens next? Mid Sussex District Council have it within their power the ability to issue a stop notice. That is generally considered the next step in enforcement, which would require Scientology to stop all works on the site and then apply for planning permission before continuing, or to take down the marquee while they seek permission. If Scientology then ignore the stop notice, it becomes a criminal matter. And if it is deemed by the court as an offence, then what results is jail time. The people responsible for the event will go to prison. And in addition to that, the government can fine Scientology. Now, the limit of the fine is usually £20,000 upwards. And they, in order to determine how much the fine will be, they look at the financial benefit that has occurred as a result of the breach. I.e., how much money did the IES event make and how much profit did it produce for the church, and what's the financial benefit as a result of building the marquee. And that number will be taken into consideration when figuring out how much to fine them. So there's a lot at stake here, because that court case would be entertaining in and of itself, because Scientology would try and argue they didn't make any money from this event, even though it's widely known and regarded as the biggest fundraising event in their calendar. So it will be interesting to watch in terms of a courtroom drama. But what we require is the council to take enforcement action. And I just don't know why they haven't done that yet. The tent has been in place for 4 or 5 weeks already, and a stop notice, as far as I'm aware, has not been issued. And it certainly seems like it's one rule for them and one rule for the rest of us. If I was to put up a giant 45,000 square foot tent in my garden, you can be sure the council will swiftly issue a stop notice. And I don't understand why Scientology are being allowed to get away with it so far. So in terms of what they can do, yes, they can issue a fine, but it's a massive fine, and it does result in potential prison sentence as well. Mouse asks, is there berthing for all 400? Yes, the Scientology SEAL staff who live and work at St. Hill actually live at accommodation at Walsh Manor in Crowborough, which is another village half an hour, 40 minutes away, and they get transported to and from the property every morning. Rachel asks, Alex, question, is it likely you'll protest on the weekend of the 11th and 12th? Is there anyone on the inside who has given any indication when it might be? And all I will say is, as soon as I am 100% certain of the date of the IES event, I will be announcing that here on my channel. I do have a number of inside sources, both in Scientology and other related organizations. And I do get information from people who are under the radar. And as soon as I hear from them about the date, I will of course let you guys know. But I always wait to hear from more than one person. I have to have multiple people confirm the date with me before I am convinced that that is the actual date. Last year we had 4 weeks notice. The year before that, I think we had 3 weeks notice. So it is usually quite a last minute affair, but as soon as I know, I will let you guys know, and the protest planning will ramp up. But protest planning's already underway. It is definitely going to happen. It's just a case of when, so stay tuned. And like I said at the beginning of this video, if you are an East Grinstead resident and you are concerned about Scientology's massive unwanted erection, you can write in and complain. Please only do so if you are a local resident, but you can also rest assured that your information will be redacted from the public record so that you don't get any sort of repercussions, harassment, or fair game from Scientology. So that's the update from me for now, guys. As I said, this is a bit of a longer one because it's been a while. I am now getting settled into my temporary studio place here that I'm streaming from. I did have to move house. Got Scientology fair game to thank for that one. I'll go into more detail about that and my trip to the US in my next live stream. But if you guys want to support the channel, you can do so by pressing the like button, by commenting down below. Once the live stream finishes, please refresh the page and comment underneath the video because that helps push this out to more people. You can also use the Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal links down below to donate if you want to support in a financial way. But that's it for now, guys. I will see you on the next one.